He cast his mother out, thinking she was useless, but she was hiding a fortune that could save their entire bloodline. Her own son had driven her out of the very house she had built with her own hands. Yet he had no idea that she was holding a secret greater than land or wealth. Nasha didn't say a word as she stepped over the clay threshold. The sound of her straw sandals tapping against the baked floor rang out louder than it should have. Her hand gripped the old cloth bag tightly, not because of the sun scorching her skin, but because she was forcing herself not to cry, the kind of tears that only fall when your heart is rejected by your own flesh and blood. That year, the village of Mbara was enduring the harshest dry season in nearly 2 decades. The streams had dried up to bare rock beds, the earth cracked open, and the sacred drums no longer sounded the harvest celebrations. Instead, they beat out a mournful rhythm of hunger and thirst. In that heavy heat, a woman was driven out of the very home she had built with her own hands. Her name was Nasha, which means grace in the ancient Shona language. At 68, her back was bent from the years, but her eyes remained bright, and her hands still knew how to soothe children, mend torn clothes, and cook the fragrant sadza that the whole village once craved. But none of that mattered the day her only son, Mugabe, stood blocking the doorway and said, "This house belongs to me and my wife now. You don't have anything to contribute anymore," Mugabe said harshly. Beside him was his wife, Tariro, heavily pregnant with their 3rd child. Tariro added, no longer polite, "Our children need a place to sleep, food to eat. You're just a burden. Do you even know that the porridge yesterday was made from the last of the rice? You gave it away." Meanwhile, the kids have fevers and there's nothing left at home. Mugabe turned away, unable to look his mother in the eye. The weight of debts, failed crops, and pressure from his wife had drained his patience. His mother's quiet kindness, like secretly sharing rice with the widow next door, was now seen as betrayal. "Why do you keep helping outsiders? What about your own children and grandchildren?" he snapped, not angry but as if forcing himself to hold something together before it shattered. "We're struggling meal to meal. You're no longer part of the solution, you're part of the problem." Tariro said nothing, only squeezed Mugabe's hand gently. She had endured enough, the many times she had to humble herself, in the very house she lived in, because her mother-in-law quietly ruled everything. No one dared to challenge. Nasha remained silent, not a word of protest. She understood, and she was sad, not because she was being cast out, but because the children she loved no longer saw her heart. She bowed her head, gathered the worn cloth sack containing a few old clothes and the dull axe left by her late husband, then left. The wooden hut she had built with her own hands, laying the very first clay bricks. No one stopped her. No one said thank you. What Mugabe didn't know was that Nasha had never been as poor as she appeared. 30 years earlier, when Mugabe's father, Shinoya, died in a mining accident in the northern mountains, the tribe had left her a small plot of land by the Zambezi River. At the time, no one saw much value in it. The land would flood when the water rose, the path was treacherous, and wild animals were common. They advised Nasha to sell it and use the money to raise her children. But she shook her head. Ancestral land isn't something to trade for a single meal. Since then, every year, she quietly paid the land tax to the village chief, sometimes going hungry to do so. Only she and the village priest knew. That land held a mineral vein, not gold or copper, but pure white salt, the kind once used in sacred rituals. Last year, an Arab trader came to the village. He had heard rumors about the ancient salt vein and asked to buy every inch of land. When he learned that Nasha held the title deed, he knelt down, offering a leather pouch full of coins and a handwritten contract in Swahili. She accepted the money but made one condition. All funds would be deposited into the Chinoya Soul Fund, under the name of a charity supporting widows and orphans. Only she had the authority to use it. That night, Nasha didn't return home. She spent the night in an abandoned shrine on the village's edge, surrounded by the chirping of crickets and smoke from the old sacred fire. Under the moonlight, she opened her cloth bag and took out a yellowed piece of cowhide, a hand-drawn sketch of the small hut she had dreamed of building near the sacred spring when she was young. The following week, a new hut sprang up in the dry land. Its walls were made of fired bricks, the roof thatched with jute leaves, and around it grew small vegetable beds she watered with collected rain. People called it the Grace Hut, but no one knew who the real owner was. 2 moons passed, and the Grace Hut became a refuge for the abandoned. Fatherless children, battered wives, and elderly cast out by their own families. There they ate warm porridge, learned embroidery, and listened to stories of the Makonde women warriors, those who survived not with swords but with perseverance. The small village of Mabara was growing ever more desperate, and Mugabe was falling apart. After a failed rainy season left the fields dry, Tariro couldn't bear the life of poverty and left with their child. Debts from failed businesses weighed heavily on Mugabe's shoulders. One night, as Mugabe wandered to the old market, he noticed a sign hanging on the hut's gate. Here, everyone has a place, even those who have made mistakes. He stepped inside. The wind from the cooking fire carried the scent of freshly made corn porridge, mingled with lemongrass and warm ash. A soft lullaby floated faintly, no clear voice, just an ancient breath humming through the straw walls and misty smoke. Mugabe's eyes scanned the room, elders mending mats, children sleeping soundly in the arms of strangers, but warm, like in his mother's home long ago. Then he saw her. At the far end, behind a thin straw curtain, a thin woman was sitting, embroidering on a worn piece of cloth. Her hair was white as salt, her back slightly bent, but her hands moved steadily. On the dirt floor, a small cat curled up, asleep beside a wooden bowl. She didn't look up, as if she already knew he would come. "Hello, son." That voice, the sound that once lulled him to sleep in a hammock throughout his childhood, burst in Mugabe's mind like the beating of a calling drum. He knelt down, not out of guilt, but because he could no longer stand. "Mom, Mom." His voice broke and choked. I drove you away. Can you forgive me?" Nasha set down her embroidery hoop and slowly turned her head. Her eyes held no anger, no resentment, just a silent ocean filled with time, memories, and endurance. She didn't answer right away. She just stared at Mugabe for a long time, as if looking at the tiny boy who once had a fever and convulsions in the night, whom she had held tightly for 3 sleepless days. Then she stood up and slowly approached him, her fingertips gently touching his forehead, like a priest bestowing a blessing. "You've grown up," she whispered. "Grown so much that you forgot the sound of your mother's heartbeat while singing you to sleep." He broke down in tears. The crying was no longer restrained, no longer holding on to the image of a strong man or the ego that once believed he was right. It was just a child, raw, broken, searching for the first warmth of his life. Nasha sat down beside him. "You forgot me," she said without blame, "but I never stopped waiting for you to come back. Because the earth may dry, the trees may shed their leaves, but the roots remain deep underground, remembering and waiting." Mugabe couldn't speak. He simply rested his head on her lap, the only home he ever needed. Outside, the rain began to fall softly, the first rain of the season. A rain that seemed accidental, yet came at just the right moment, as if nature itself knew. Some things are cleansed not by water, but by forgiveness. Nasha looked at her son for a long moment, then gently lifted his head. "You didn't drive me away. You just forgot your roots." But the roots don't blame the fallen leaves. They only wait for the day the leaves return. From that day on, Mugabe stayed, helping his mother build the shelter, chop firewood, and repair the roof. Every evening, the two of them sat by the fire, reading books and telling stories of their ancestors. By the next dry season, the Grace Hut officially became Nasha Community Home, with over 30 residents and a small medicinal garden tended by Mugabe. When Nasha took her last breath on the porch, the sun was setting behind the baobab trees. Her eyes closed, still smiling. She left no wealth behind, only a bunch of keys and a map marking the underground water sources around the area. Her funeral was the largest the village had ever seen. No drums, no ivory horns, just whispered words. Nasha, the woman who built a home with forgiveness. Mugabe stood before his mother's grave, holding a bunch of basil she once loved. His body trembled slightly. Hands that had once been rough from digging now felt as soft and fragile as a lost child's. He gripped the basil tightly, the delicate leaves cutting lightly into his skin, but he didn't feel the pain. Deep inside, there was a strange feeling, not just regret, but the emptiness of someone who had just lost their roots. My mother left no wealth, she left a legacy, he whispered, and now I will protect it with everything I have. Dear friends, if this story touched your heart, please spread the spirit of women like Nasha, quietly heroic, by pressing like button of this video, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of change and courage. See you next time.